So I just had a company dinner and I spent $1,200 on that company dinner. Here's the crazy part, is that someone actually took around $1,200 and created a $750 million empire. And they did it with systems, training, and hospitality. So Portillos is an amazing concept and they've blown up as a brand. I wanna break it down for you. It all started with a Marine veteran in Chicago, in the suburbs, who started a hot dog business. He started with $1,100. Not $1,100 a day, not $1,100 a week, $1,100 total in a tiny little trailer. There was no bathroom, there was no running water. He would run a 250-foot garden hose from a nearby building just to operate. And now, 60 years later, that same brand is a public company doing about $710 million annually in revenue. And if you understand why Portillos worked, you'll understand what scaling actually requires as a business. Because Portillos did not scale on vibes or luck or hope. They scaled on systems, speed, brand obsession, and unit economics. That was a winning formula. And that is exactly what we are going to break down today, okay? So first things first, I'm gonna show you three things. One, I'm gonna give you the real reason Portillos went from a trailer to a machine. Number two, I'm gonna show you the milestones that mattered and what they did differently at each and every stage. And number three, I'm gonna show you how to translate their playbook into a clear blueprint that you can install using the 30%. Now, if you stay with me, we'll walk away with a copy and paste expansion mindset and blueprint. Not a theory, a plan. This is the type of origin story that creates believers. Here's the thing about a great restaurant brand. It's not just about food. It is a story people can repeat in one breath. Portillo's story is in one breath. In 1963, Dick Portillo opens a hot dog stand in Villa Park, Illinois. He invests $1,100 in a 6x12 foot trailer. No bathroom, no running water, just a 250-foot garden hose in the trailer to get the water. That detail matters because it tells you how he thought. He didn't wait for perfection. He built with what he had. Very important. But here's the part most people miss. This story was not just survival, it was positioning. So he put the first trailer in the suburbs, in the most competitive city corner, and he built his reputation where families actually lived and drove every single day. And he made one promise to the customer: you're going to get your food fast. It's going to be clean, it's going to taste the same every single time, and that was the first major milestone. Not growth, consistency. One foot in front of the other. This is so important. Most restaurants never get this down first. Consistency first. Because you cannot scale inconsistency. It can only spread, which makes things terrible. It's gonna break your business. And what Dick Portillo was truly building was trust. He was building trust and brand value. So now for the first expansion lesson from Portillo's. Speed wins, but only if accuracy can keep up. As the business grows, Portillo's evolves from a single stand into something much, much bigger. They expand the menu beyond hot dogs. They start becoming a full Chicago comfort food destination. They start making Italian beef, Italian sausage, and then desserts and broader menu options like burgers. That turned a visit into a family decision. Not a solo snack, right? It's not just, hey, I'm gonna come in here and get a hot dog. I'm gonna bring my whole family and they all have options that they can order from. This matters for unit economics later because a restaurant that can win group decisions wins volume. Now, let's talk about the operational obsession. Portillo's becomes famous for a simple feeling. The lines look insane, but it moves. That is not a miracle, that is a thought put of engineering. Over time, Portillo's leans hard into drive-thru, and by 2023, drive-thru represented about 40% of sales. That one fact tells you something very important. Portillo's is not just a restaurant, it's an operations company disguised as a restaurant. And this is the lesson. If you want to scale, you must build a business that can handle peak volume without melting down. Most restaurants are built like a canoe. One bad rush, one weak manager, one new cook, and you take on water. But Portillo's was not operating as a canoe, they were operating as a ship. Now we get into the controlled growth era, and I start by saying three words: slow, disciplined, and compounding. And let me explain. Now, here's a part that should humble everybody. Portillo's did not sprint to dozens of units quickly. It took decades. In fact, by 2014, Portillo's was around 38 locations and doing about $300 million in revenue. And notably, it had no debt. Let me translate that. They built a strong business first, then they scaled. Most people do the opposite. They try to scale a fragile business. They open a second location while the first one is still dependent on the owner's mood, the one-star server, the one manager who holds it all together. That is not scaling. That is multiplying stress, multiplying issues, multiplying problems. Portillos did it in the most boring way possible. They made sure that their location was durable, bankable, and made it attractive to serious capital. This is a massive milestone that they knew that they hit, and then they were ready to scale. Because the difference between a restaurant that can become a chain and a restaurant that stays a single unit is not their food. It's not their vibe, it's not their look, it's not their reviews. It is their repeatability. And repeatability is built through standards, systems, and leadership depth. All of those things have to have depth, right? Your standards have to have the depth. Your systems have to have the depth. Your leadership has to have the depth. So this is where things go really crazy. It's the Berkshire partner moment. This is where capital meets the proven machine. In 2014, Portillos enters the private equity era with Berkshire Partners investing in the company. Public sources widely reported the deal was worth almost $1 billion. Now, I want you to understand what private equity is really buying when you buy a restaurant brand. They are buying a repeatable box. They are buying a unit of economics. They are buying a growth runway. They are buying an operating model that can survive people changes. It cannot be dependent on a person. It cannot be dependent on an owner. It cannot be dependent on a leader. It cannot be dependent on a CEO. And Portillos had already proven this. High volume, operational discipline, brand loyalty, and a menu that travels because it is anchored to its identity, Chicago style. That is why the deal happened. It's really important to understand that. They did not just sell the CEO, they did not just sell the brand, they sold the economics and the systems behind it. Now, not because the hot dog was good, because the machine was good.
Sorry to interrupt, but I always forget to mention this. I'm talking about training, I'm talking about leadership, and I'm talking about systems. I'm talking about building out your operations so you can trust your staff to give hospitality at a high level so they can control that guest retention lever, right? Upsell lever, 5-star review lever, right? And all this stuff ultimately creates a culture of excellence and a culture of hospitality, which lowers employee turnover rate. So all these ways of making your business much more successful, how do we do it, right? We've helped over 350 restaurants worldwide. It does get expensive, me flying out there doing all these things, but for the first time ever, I'm gonna have you come down to me where we can meet up on a 2-day intensive and show you how to build all these things out, leadership, training, and systems. And I'm not doing it alone. I have the master himself, Will Guidara, the author of Unreasonable Hospitality, and together, we're gonna show you how to build these things. You can't miss this event. This will change everything in your business forever, and all it takes is 2 days. So bring yourself, bring your leadership team, walk away with the playbook that we're gonna give you and the energy, get your staff bought in. Tickets are extremely limited. You can find the link in the description. I click the link. Let's get going.
So now, we went public. They're killing it. $1 billion. Now, here's where things really take off. October of 2021, and shares began trading. The IPO raised a little over $405 million, according to some sources, and the deal valued the company around $1.9 billion at the debut. Revenue for that fiscal 2024 is widely reported around $710 million. This is not a small company anymore. This is not a trailer with a garden hose attached to it. This is a real machine that is so rare. This milestone is proving that a regional cult brand can become an investable national growth story. But this only works if the unit economics hold, which brings up the next engine. Here's a part that everybody ignores. Until they are broke, Portillos stands out in fast casual because the stores do a shocking amount of volume. In a 2022 investor event, Portillo's leadership cited average unit volume around $8.4 million in revenue. That's freaking insane. With restaurant level EBITDA margins in the mid-20s. National Restaurant News has also described Portillo's as achieving average unit volumes north of 8.5, confirming that original number. And that's around 80 locations. That's insane for average number. 8.5 million, most restaurants never do that with one unit, and you're scaling to 80 nationwide and that's your average, you're absolutely crushing it. Now, on top of that, Restaurant Business reported that Chicago area units were around 10.8 million AUV, with the Sunbelt units around 7.1 million, while the company explored smaller prototypes. Now, let's translate what that means in simple terms. If your average restaurant does 2 to 3 million a year, you are playing a different game. Portillo's is playing a volume game. Volume creates leverage. Volume gives you room to invest in training. Volume gives you room to pay better managers. Volume gives you room to pay for better leaders. Volume gives you room to run a real hiring funnel. Volume gives you marketing power. Volume gives you the ability to survive a few mistakes or an economic downturn. And that's why unit economics matter. Because scaling is not about opening more, creating more, building more. Scaling is about staying profitable while you open more. So with all these operations talks, scaling the right way, scaling profitable, how has Portillo's turned chaos into controlled speed? How do they do that? Portillo's built its identity around speed and consistency. This is the core. I want you to think about that, right? High throughput, high accuracy, high cleanliness. The customer experience is simple, but absolutely crucial and important. It's an obsession of theirs. They made it their #1 priority. Customer experience at a high level through simplicity. You drive up, you move, you get the same thing every time. So how do they do it? They design their restaurants for flow. They lean into drive-thrus, the infrastructure, often with robust lanes. Their leadership has described their drive-thru model as a very different style of service, with people coming out and curating your order. It even is going as far as running the food out to the cars. Okay, this matters because it's not just a window transaction, right? It's a service system. They make it their own service system. It's not a typical drive-thru, and they don't treat it that way. And it's not even the same experience if you go into the store. And notice something, Portillo's operational advantage is not a fancy trick. It's 1,000 boring decisions done right. They perfected every decision, every piece. They've mapped out everything. They have trained for common sense. Positioning, parking lot flow, order taking systems, kitchen staging, prep discipline, line communication, expo discipline, manager presence. In other words, it's systemization on systemization. And systemization is the only way to scale quality. Point blank, period. You cannot scale properly without systems. More things will break as you scale. Now, the brand is really important, right? They had a Chicago identity, nostalgia, and cult behavior. Portillo's did something brilliant. They did not try to be everything. They became Chicago. They sell the feeling of Chicago food culture to Chicago natives and Chicago transplants. Even their own story page leans into the idea that it's not a real trip to Chicago unless you eat at Portillo's. That is not a menu statement. That's a cultural statement. And culture is what creates repeat behavior. Hear me out here, okay? Here is the business truth. People do not evangelize generic brands. They evangelize identity. Portillo's has identity. And that's why when they enter a new market, they can attract a base instantly. Chicago transplants, food fans, sports fans, food tourists, curious locals. The first wave is fueled by story and identity, and then the second wave is fueled by operations. Think about it. If the line is long but fast, people will forgive the wait. Awesome, right? Came up to this new place, it's brand new, it's open, line out the door, but it's fast because they have operations. They're operationally sound. They know what they're doing. It's plug and play, repeat, because they've done the work. They've created the systems. But if the line is long and slow, they'll never come back. You failed operationally. So now when we talk about expansion, the growth strategy and the danger zone are what you want to pay attention to, okay? So with that, we're gonna talk growth. It took Portillo's decades to get to dozens of stores, but then the pace accelerated. That is common in restaurant brands. Once the engine is proven, growth speeds up. Think about that, repeat that. Once the engine is proven, growth speeds up. But here's the truth most founders cannot handle. Expansion exposes every weakness you've been hiding. If your training is not sound, expansion will break you. If your managers are not leaders and they're not developed properly, expansion will break you. If your food quality depends on one person, expansion will break you. If your brand awareness does not travel, expansion will slow you down. Recent reporting has even discussed challenges in Texas tied to brand awareness and expansion expectations, with leaders acknowledging learning from the market. We have to learn the market sometimes to actually expand there the right way. And if you do it before learning the market, it can be a little bit detrimental. Okay, now look, this is not a knock, this is reality. Growth is a test, and the winners are the brands that can adjust without losing who they are. So this is why Portillo's has been testing smaller prototypes, the so-called restaurants of the future approach, to lower costs while protecting volume. Smaller footprint, smaller cost, bigger output. Okay, because once you are scaling, the model must evolve while the experience stays consistent, okay? You can play with sizes, you can play with menus, the experience is what matters. The guest experience, how is the staff treating the guest? That is the biggest freaking thing, and that is a balancing act. Now, let's connect the dots. Portillo's invisible success is the 30%, what we always talk about, the systems your guests do not see, but they feel, and they come back for it. So to break it down really simply, Portillo's did not win because they had a better hot dog or a better beef sandwich. They won because they built an operating system that turns a rush into revenue, not stress. And so here, with the 30%, one thing we focus on is pillars. And I'm gonna break these down to pillars for you so you have a blueprint to walk away with, okay? Pillar number one, the brand spine. Portillo's had a simple identity, Chicago food culture. Founder story, consistency. You wanna codify your spine in one page or even one decision and make it align. Pillar number two, the throughput machine, okay? Portillo's drive-thru, for example, was a major sales driver. Around 40% of sales came through drive-thrus in 2023. Okay, so you wanna build a flow map for stuff like that, right? They built a flow map, and so maybe do that just inside your restaurant now. Build a flow map to make sure that you're turning tables as fast as you can or running through lines as fast as you can if you have a QSR, but you wanna make these things standards and make sure you're measuring speed so that way you can start controlling it. Okay, what gets measured gets managed. Volume does not kill the experience. Pillar number three, training that creates confidence. High volume only works when people know exactly what to do. Okay, you have to build role-specific training, piece by piece, train the trainer protocols, and assessments so your culture does not depend on memory. Those all have to be built out from top to bottom. And pillar number four is leadership depth. Okay, Portillo's model is built for consistency across the company, and that is based on their leaders. That is held by their leaders. They cannot do it without their leaders. That requires their leaders who can execute without founders. That is so important. You want to build leadership cadence, scorecards, accountability loops, development processes, because they are the ones that are going to keep the standard alive using all of those things. Pillar number five is unit economics discipline, okay? Portillo's highlights AUV and the restaurant level margins as part of their investment story. You want to install weekly scorecards for this that tracks only a few numbers that are actually important that control profitability, that everyone can read, everyone can talk to, everyone can speak on. The actual deliverables you can pitch. You want them to speak on it. You want them to have the numbers that they know are gonna grow the company. You wanna know those numbers yourself. What numbers are we watching? Now, there's a lot of numbers you should be looking at, but if you're not looking at your numbers constantly, if you're not very well versed in your numbers, you wanna start by finding the important ones, right? Labor, liquor, food, disposables. Start looking at those numbers and making sure you know how to control those numbers, making sure that you have boundaries on those numbers, and making sure you know how to measure those numbers, because what gets measured gets managed. We have to be talking about those numbers all the time with our leadership and executive teams. Those four topics. Outside of that, then you can start growing from outside of that. You can start growing those numbers. What else do we need to look at? We can start fine-tuning that actual look of all the numbers, EBITDA, all that good stuff. But focus first on those four numbers, okay? Start with those five pillars. Listen, Portillo's didn't have anything special. They didn't have money, they didn't have brand recognition, they didn't know somebody. We can look at them now and say, yeah, they're a huge $700 million annual beast of a company that kills it, right? But they didn't start off that way. They started off with a trailer. They started off with standards. They started off with a mission. They started off with a goal, with a brand identity. That's what we need to focus on. Right now, I can tell you, any restaurant can start being successful if you start focusing on the guest experience first, because that's what's lacking in the industry so badly. That's what's lacking in the market so badly right now. That's what people are craving more than ever. I wanna find a place that I can trust. I wanna find a place I'm gonna get the same experience every time I go in there, and it's a high level experience. I wanna find a place that makes me feel valued. And that all starts with training, systems, and leadership. How are you developing your people? How much time are you spending developing your people? And what is a goal with developing of those people look like? What is a number one goal that you're focused on? If you do that, I promise you everything in your restaurant will change. But first things first, start with an assessment. What does your training look like? What does your leadership development look like? And what do your systems look like?
Thank you for watching the video. And again, if you're interested in developing your training, systems, and leadership, ultimately your operations to give your guests the best experience possible, to get your guest retention skyrocketing, your 5-star reviews skyrocketing, your upsell skyrocketing, to lower your turnover rate and have a culture of excellence, click the link in the description for our live 2-day event. Tickets may be sold out, but if they're not, snag them now.